Hi, Todd.
Good morning.
Morning. Welcome back to the cul-de-sac.
Oh, I'm glad to be here.
Your bike's almost as quiet as that.
I doubt it. I was like, I almost texted you and said, if you get out there with your camera, you can hear me coming for 2 blocks.
I could hear you.
You know. Good morning. I'm Todd, and I brought my weird bike here today that confuses everybody. This is my 1999 ATK 490 ESDS, the Anti-Tension Kettenantrieb. It's an electric start dual sport. Most of the ATKs made were dirt bikes. ATK grew out of the dirt bike boom of the 1970s as shown on the movie On Any Sunday, which I believe all of you have seen. And what happened, of course, is that technology had to keep up with the boom, and so there was more horsepower, and then when they went faster, they needed more suspension, and they made these exceptionally long travel, mostly motocross bikes. And then they started having a trouble with what is referred to as chain whip. And out of Austria came a fellow named Horst Leitner, who was not only just an engineer, he was a motocross champion and an international 6 days trial medal winner. And being an engineer and a motorcyclist, he looked at this problem and came up with a relatively simple solution, which was called the A-track, which is essentially just 2 chain wheels that clamped on the top and bottom of your swing arm and kept the chain under tension, thus the Anti-Tension Kettenantrieb. And I probably slaughtered that. But that's the ATK, and he was pretty successful with that. But then, of course, the Japanese and European engineers caught on to what the issue was and changed their chassis to accommodate and take care of that chain whip problem. Horst went on to design kit frames for Hondas and other bikes for your motocrosser to have a better chassis, because when you have an engineer who's a motorcyclist, you don't need translated feedback. His feedback was what went into the chassis. He started making motorcycles. In 1985, the ATK motorcycle was born. It evolved from making kit frames, or at least designing the frames, as I understand. Famous frame maker C&J down in California made some of the frames for him at times in batches. But anyway, he did kind of like what the Rickman brothers in England did, which was to make a superior chassis design and then buy the best components he could find for it. In those days, it was mostly white power, which we now refer to as WP suspension, since, you know, white power got a bad connotation in the United States, and various other components that are really high grade. Horst eventually left the company. In talking to his son, there was a couple of things. They moved the factory farther away from where he lived, and his ideas might not have been met with production, and the money guys were being money guys. And being an engineer like that is almost like being an artist. Art and money don't always mix. So he left the company. The company stayed in California for a few years and then moved up to Utah, where it still exists today. They made motorcycles, their own motorcycles, up through like 2002. Then they took on the failed Cannondale E440 project from the bankruptcy of Cannondale and made those for a few years. And then that didn't work either, and then they've done other things. They tried brand labeling some Asian motorcycles and selling those and other things. But anyway, they're still in existence, so you can still buy a lot of parts from them. Fortunately, I don't need a lot of ATK specific parts. When I do, I can go to them and pretty much get a lot of stuff, except for the seat cover, which you'll see. This is a later chassis design that is just unique in the motorcycling world. You can see that here's your typical oil filler for your oil and frame oil reservoir, and it comes down under this little shield and comes down, and the main tube comes to here on this side of the bike. It's got a single linkless shock, which was a big ATK feature on this side of the bike. That was their thing for like the last 4 years of their existence, was this kind of sideways frame setup. They bought things in. The plastics came from KTM. The front fork on this vintage is a Paoli out of Italy. It's got an Oline shock, Talon hubs out of England, Sun rims, Brembo brakes, Super Trap exhaust, and all these other things. So almost all high quality premium components on here. But they skimped on a few things like the ignition switch, which they didn't need on their dirt bikes, of course. That was just a nightmare. I substituted in one off a Honda 350 that was much simpler to wire up. The original one had, I don't know, 6 or 7 or 8 connectors on the back, and it was not integrated with a plug. You had to try to remember where all 6 of these wires went, and so you would be screwing around. Did the lights come on? No, the lights don't come on. Does the taillight work? No. So it was really a superior motorcycle. The problem was that it was like $1,000 more than a Honda 650 of the same basic configuration. This is a little racier than that because it's essentially a cross-country racer with lights. When you ride it, you're in third gear almost before you cross an intersection. The first 2 gears are so low for dirt riding, and then third gear is kind of normal riding. Fourth gear gets you down around town, and fifth gear you can cruise on the highway at 60, 65 with no problem. It uses the famous Rotax motor from the 80s, which was used in a lot of things. Dominated AMA flat track racing in the States in the 600 configuration. This has got a smaller piston and a smaller carburetor. There's also an identical looking bike called the 605. I have not changed much on this bike since I got it. I bought this bike from my friend Paul, who you saw in a previous video that Mike did called Norton's in the Bedroom. And he had all these dual sports shoved in the corner of his oversized garage. He had bought dual sports over the years because his brothers and brother-in-law would come up, and living in Tillamook, there's the Tillamook State Forest, like 15 minutes from his house, all sorts of fabulous dual sport riding and dirt bike riding out there. The dual sports ended up being pushed in the corner, so when I'd go over and visit Paul, I'd be eyeballing this ATK because I'd read about them and what fabulous bikes they were. And then my wife decided that, you know what, our kids are grown, she has fabulous health insurance, she wants to ride again. And in the mix of the 6 dirt bikes was a 2006 Suzuki DRZ 400S. So I wanted those 2, but Paul wanted to buy another Lotus. He already had one. He had the Lotus 7 that you saw in the Norton's in the Bedroom, but he wanted an Esprit. He made me a great offer to buy all 6 dirt bikes because he wanted them all gone. So when I got it, it had been sitting for years. So I just popped the carburetor off, which is a little more difficult than it seems because everything's so compact in here. Cleaned that and got a kit to get the new rubber and gasket stuff for it, and then put a new belt on it. And when I say a belt, you're going, belt drive? No. These Rotax have a belt-driven overhead cam. And if I would take that little cover off right there, you could see the belt and the 2 tensioners that keep it in line. And then I just started riding it. I had to put tires on it, flush the brakes, and all sorts of things like that. But that's been like 8 years ago now, I think. Mechanically, it's held up really well. I can get the motor parts from several sources. Being essentially a cross-country racer with lights slapped on it, it's got this mediocre headlight that you'll see. I'm not really happy with, and I changed out the turn signals, I think you can see that one, to LEDs to help boost the wattage, but the tail light was like a 35 watt little tail light about this big, and I didn't like that. And I was in our local Cycle Gear and I saw this LED combination license plate frame, and it's got the turn signals, stoplight, running light all integrated, and it is brighter than heck. So I feel a lot better about riding it on the road with that. The seat cover is less than good. I've been trying to get an original one to keep the bike original. I posted up on some of the Facebook pages about it, and unfortunately I've not gotten anything positive out of that. As you do on Facebook, a lot of people barely read what I said and offered me solutions that I didn't need. The A-track that Horst sold was later engineered out of existence by the motorcycle companies because the basic problem was the swing arm pivot and the countershaft sprocket location were too far apart, and they re-engineered their frames and maybe their motors to take care of that. And so the A-track part of it disappeared, and it did not appear on the ATK motorcycles that followed. Why they kept the ATK name, I don't know. It seems kind of funny that they made a device and then they named their motorcycle after it. Yeah, so it's been a great bike. I intend to put new grips, which will come real soon, and then get the seat cover problem taken care of, and it should be all shiny and new for the fall riding season. I've liked this bike from the beginning, not only because I had read good things about it back when it was made in the 80s and the 90s, but my friend Paul, who wrote it, is smaller than average guy. And this is clearly a bike that's made for a larger than average guy, not just his seat height, but everything else. When I ride it, or when my son, who's even bigger than me, rides, it fits us pretty well. It could use the handlebars a little higher. I'll probably get my friend Jeff to make me some risers for that are a little higher. I doubt that I'll ever sell this thing. I'm sure I'll pass it on to my son, who's also an avid motorcyclist, and he'll enjoy it because he's already enjoyed it quite a bit.
Cool. We'll see you again soon.
Well, it'll
Thanks
either start right up. Oh, one thing I didn't mention about this that you'll like as a technical detail. Gotta make sure your pants are all the way up to swing your leg over this thing. Is that this Del Orto, the choke, instead of being like a little something you pull up or pull out, it's a cable that loops over and then there's a flip lever. So it's either on or it's off. So it does make starting a challenge at times.
Thanks very much for watching, guys. This has been another tale from the cul-de-sac. Please remember to subscribe and click the little bell and you'll get a notice whenever I release a new video, usually every Sunday morning and sometimes during the week.
Everybody had to then he's almost done. There we go. As I mentioned before, there's a lot of high quality premium components on here. I'll do that again, so the truck's not in the shot.